and this is my assessment task 3 persuasive video presentation for understanding the business environment. In this assessment, I will be taking on the role of a financial accountant at Lovisa, a global fashion jewelry retailer. In this presentation, I will analyze 4 key economic topics and explain how they influence my organization. In 2026, the Australian government introduced tax cuts, which increased household disposable income and encouraged greater consumer spending. Short-run aggregate goes upward as businesses would produce more with higher prices. Long-run aggregate supply represents the economy's productive capacity. The aggregate demand represents total spending in the economy. It slips downward because higher price levels reduce consumers' purchasing power. After the tax cuts, aggregate demand shifts to the right, reflecting increased spending. After the tax cuts, the demand leads to a new equilibrium with higher output and a higher price level. This indicates economic growth, but also rising inflation, with output exceeding sustainable capacity. For Lovisa, there will be an increased spending which leads to higher importing. However, inflation also raises operating costs such as wages. In the long run, the impact of tax cuts changes as the initial economic boom at AD1. As the general price level rises, workers push for higher wages to maintain their purchasing power. This increases production costs for businesses, causing the short-run aggregate supply curve to shift to the left. As a result, the economy adjusts to a new equilibrium, where aggregate demand, short-run supply, and long-run supply intersect. At this point, output returned to its original level, but price remains higher. This shows that over time, tax cuts contribute to inflation. As the inflation raises, so does the government debt. This can lead to future tax increases or reduced government spending, which could slow overall economic activity. For Lovisa, if tax cuts encourage more people to join the workforce, this could support ongoing trade activity with their jewelry. However, continued inflation will increase operating expenses, such as the wages. Since COVID-19, Australia has experienced significant inflation caused by both supply and demand factors. The pandemic disrupted supply chains, causing many factories to shut down as international shipping was delayed and there was shortage of raw materials and labor. The higher costs was then shifted to higher prices towards consumers. To control inflation, the Reserve Bank of Australia increased interest rates as part of the contractionary monetary policy. Higher interest rates increases the cost of borrowing, which reduces spending and investment. This means that consumers are less likely to take out loans because it becomes expensive. As a result, the price level begins to stabilize. This is because after spending and investment decreases, the aggregate demand slows, helping inflation move towards the target range. However, lower consumer spending and investment can slow the economy, causing the real GDP to decline. Businesses with lower demand may reduce production and have their operating costs cut. This can lead to higher unemployment from reducing employees. For Lovisa, lower consumer spending reduces demand for jewelry. Jewelry is not an essential item, which would expect a large decrease in demand. When the interest rate rises and households face higher living expenses, consumers would focus on non-essential spending. This will lower demand and cause harm to the sales revenue for Lovisa. However, if the high interest rates can successfully lower inflation, then it can help stabilize operating costs. The prices will then become more predictable, allowing the company to manage its costs more effectively. Overall, if high interest rates continue for a long period, Lovisa may experience a weaker consumer demand and expansion despite the stabilization of inflation. When tariffs are introduced, it increases the chance of imported goods because there is additional tax placed upon them. In the United States, the higher price encourages domestic producers to continue producing, while the quantity demanded by consumers decrease, leading to imports decrease. The domestic producers are the winners as they can sell more products at higher prices. President Trump and the government benefits because they get the revenue that has been imported from goods. The consumers in the United States lose because they have limited market available and is negatively affected by higher prices from producers. Producers outside of the United States are negatively affected from selling fewer goods there. The line represents the world price, which is the price under free trade before tariff is introduced. At this level, United States producers supply a quantity of quantity supplied 1, while consumers demand a larger quantity of quantity demanded 2. The difference between these two quantities reflects imports, which include products that companies like Lovisa export into the United States market. When a tariff is imposed, the price increases from the world price to a high level. That includes the tariff. This is shown by this line here. At this increased price, domestic producers in the United States expand their supply to quantity supplied 2, while consumer falls into quantity demanded 1 due to higher prices. As a result, the imports decreases significantly. Area A represents the surplus gained by the United States producers as they are able to sell more goods at high prices. Areas B and C show the government's gain through tariff revenue. A, B, C, D, E represents the overall loss to consumers, who now are faced with higher prices. Overall tariffs in the United States negatively impact Lovisa as the increased cost of importing jewelry to the United States, since jewelry is not an essential product, higher prices would discourage customers from buying, leading to a loss of revenue in the United States market. It is known that between behavioral economics show that consumers and producers do not always make rational decisions. Lovisa can make better marketing decisions to influence the consumer choices and the overall profitability when instilling better decision-making skills. Firstly, the framing effect is a cognitive bias where people react to information depending on how the information is presented. For example, Lovisa may present earrings with a slogan saying that they are saving $50 off today. Rather than showing the price, even though the information is the same, consumers respond more to an offer that emphasizes the gain when owning the product. Understanding this bias would allow Lovisa for more effective promotions. Next is the decoy effect. This is where an inferior option makes other choices look more attractive. For example, in Lovisa, a jewelry retailer may offer 3 earrings options, one basic pair for $10, and a premium pair for $25, and a slightly less attractive premium for $23. It acts as a decoy and presents a $25 as a better value. This would encourage customers to choose higher priced products. This would also allow an increase on average amount spent on their products for Lovisa. These examples demonstrate that the profitability can change without the actual quality of the product, but through psychological factors. By recognizing these factors, Lovisa can improve its pricing strategies without directly affecting products. Thank you for listening to my presentation. As a financial accountant, it is important that we understand how the changing economy and consumer behavior can influence decision making.